Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about The Dinner Table Detective Season 1, Episode 11. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Another one-off case episode, which I think is, like I said, I think it's so interesting because I was so curious to see what the tail end of the season would look like structurally. But either way, when it's all said and done, Reiko is going to a wedding. And I love her making a joke of, oh, I look so pretty, people might mistake me for the bride, but Kageyama's just kind of like, no, that wouldn't be the case. They think the person in the wedding dress is the bride. And she's like, I know, I was joking. And he was like, oh, and didn't laugh at her joke or whatever. I love that we also spend even more time, it's usually only in the second part of the case where we see Kageyama and his attempts to jab at Reiko, but now we're kind of getting a lot more of it this episode. And I don't know if she purposely, that whole bit where she was just like, no, Kageyama, wait outside. And it was Yoshida being like, no, we couldn't possibly make him wait outside. And she's like, I bet wait out here for 5 or 6 hours, he'll be fine. And then she's like, all right, you wanted to give me the puppy dog eyes, come inside. So I'm curious, was she doing that as a kind of a twisted joke of trying to get back at him for his earlier jabs? Or was she, I don't think she legitimately was going to do that. But I don't know. I thought that was her trying to mess with him, but she's like, all right, I guess I've taken it too far. But I love Reiko kind of embarrassing herself in front of the party a little bit because she's proud of Yuri, because Yuri, her family and Yuri's family have always been pretty tight. And she thought of Yuri as a little sister, and it's kind of oh man, this little sister is so talented. She learned all this wood crafting while she was in Thailand, but immediately after coming back, she immediately gets engaged, and now she's getting married before me, so it's a little upsetting. Doesn't help that Yuri's younger sister Miyuki constantly refers to her as Auntie Reiko. It's just I don't need you to remind me of my age, and specifically labeling me as an auntie, because it shows being called auntie is kind of viewed as older in regards. But yeah, we learn a little bit about the family's dynamic, and I really love that section of the episode, especially how that was stylized. That kind of I don't know what you call that kind of cutout style and depiction of animation, how that was done and depicted. I thought that whole Yuri's family situation with the Sayonji family, because there's two families occupying this place. It's the Sayonji residents, but Yuri's family, which includes her brother Yusuke, her little sister Miyuki, and their mom, are all occupying this place. Because I know Miss Sayonji, was it Kote? I know her husband died. I think the Yuri's dad is still alive. I just don't think he was in this episode, if I remember correctly. But maybe I'm, yeah, because I feel like they didn't focus on him. But either way, basically Yuri's husband Teruya, it turns out he actually worked for the Sayonji family. He was kind of a consultant, and then he kind of switched over to being a consultant to Yuri's family, and then him and Yuri got close. So Yusuke's coming at this from the perspective, and even Miyuki's oh, it's kind of weird. This guy's older than my sister. He almost looks like our dad in comparison. And then Yusuke kind of feels the way Teruya moves and operates, it feels he cozied up to my sister just to get access to her money. So he doesn't really like the guy and kind of thinks he's kind of suspicious. It was interesting because the moment he heard Reiko was from the Hosho family, he was kind of oh, you're from the Hosho family. I was that immediately go are you kind of a gold digger, where you're oh, Yuri's family's well off, but the Hoshos are even more. It kind of had a twinkling of that, where you're kind of oh, is he kind of bummed he didn't? He's because he probably had no idea Yuri's family was so close to the Hosho family. So it's if I'd known, I probably would have made moves on Reiko instead of you. Also, just kind of this neat little double butler thing where Yuri kind of tripped down the stairs, and both Kageyama and Yoshida immediately jumped in action. It's these are good butlers. And I think it's also neat when you just look at a little detail of obviously it's both of them kind of helping her, but you also see Kageyama have his hand on Yoshida's back, kind of, I guess, supporting him as well. They're all right, and are both their attempts to grab her to make sure they're both okay. I don't know, just little details like that, just being oh, that's kind of neat, both butlers jumping in action. But then we kind of get into the locked room attempted murder case because they hear screaming from Yuri. They go upstairs, but the door's locked. Yoshida goes, gets the keys. They open it and find Yuri on the bed having been stabbed. And so now it's like Reiko goes into full cop mode where it's like, hey, we got to preserve the crime scene. And then, but the cops get called, which Reiko's like, crap, I'm going to have to deal with Kiyashiro. But the thing is, he's off work right now because he's with like the senior inspector or whatever. They're off golfing, which I love that we constantly cut back to that bit where like the senior inspector can't hit the ball. He's like, oh, nice swing, but it didn't go anywhere. No, he was like, nice hit, but then it's like, oh, it didn't hit the ball. Nice swing. Oh, it was nice swing, but hit or whatever, and then it lands in the sand. And he's like, nice try. And I love that. And even like the last bit where he ends up getting a hole in one, and the guy's like, nice hole in one. And it's like, oh, because I guess Kishiro was trying to get some brownie points, and in fact, it's just kind of like, well, that didn't work out the way you were hoping it would. So, but I love we get introduced to his like replacement in this particular episode. Was it Doi? And he's just like he's inherited so much of like Kiyoshiro's mannerisms, his flip-floppiness, his whole like trying to be suave and cool, because he looks up to Kiyashiro even later on when the case is done. He's like, oh, I couldn't solve it by myself. I would have to train for a couple years to be just as good as Kiyashiro. And it's like, oh my god. Well, he has his fine points, but he's not like the all-inspiring great detective you think he is. But to be fair, we only see him on these cases. Who knows what he's like on cases outside of the ones we see him with Reiko. But either way, I love like when the investigation's underway, and it's like they're throwing out the possibilities of how things went. And like, oh, maybe the assailant jumped out the window. It's like, well, too many people are in the party. People would have noticed. He would have jumped down in front of other people. Maybe he shimmied to the other, balcony to the room beside, which is Yusuke's room. But Yusuke's room doesn't have a balcony, so that's not possible. And then immediately he throws it to Reiko, and it's like, wait, why would I be the suspect? It's like, well, because you were jealous about Yuri's wedding. And she's like, how do you know that? And it's like, oh, that guy over there told me, and it was Kageyama. I was like, that's so messed up that he would do that. I love that big. I'm like, why are you being so chatty Cathy like, Kageyama? Like, you did that super unnecessarily. But I don't know if that was a roundabout way to separate Reiko from Doi, so like they could actually do the proper investigation or kind of break down on the investigation and crime. I don't know. But then later on, she was kind of making up this whole point of like, if I go to jail, you have to go to jail with me. And he's like, well, why would I? She's like, yeah, because as my butler, you have to, if you die, I'll go to hell with you. And then he's just like, you were joking. She's like, obviously. And he kind of postures like, oh my god, that was so hilarious. And she's like, you didn't actually think it was funny. You're just mocking him. You're just mocking me. But yeah, he breaks down the case he brings up an interesting little detail I wouldn't have picked up on. I love stuff like that, where it's like, it turns out Yoshida refers to Yuri as Yuri-sama. He doesn't call her, he calls her by her name, whereas when he's referring to like his true master, like the person he serves, he refers to Kote as Ojo-sama. So it's kind of an interesting detail to keep in mind, because it's like, yeah, it shows where his allegiances are. Because the moment Yusuke went in, what did Yusuke say? He's like, yo, oh, what happened to Lady Kote? And it's like, why would he say that? It's like, unless he was under the impression Kote was in the room. And the reason why he was is because he heard what Yoshida had said. Him saying, oh, Ojo-sama, like immediately made Yusuke go like, oh, like did something happen to Kote then? It's always the little details you kind of don't think of much at the time. Because I thought that's actually where Doi was coming from when he was like, oh, the killer, he's like, oh, how did the killer deal with the locked room murder thing? It's like, well, the easiest solution to that is, hey, when everyone rushes into the room, they're so focused in front of them, they don't see what's behind them. So when they rush in, all the killer has to do is like, oh, fuse into the crowd and make it seem like they rushed in with everyone else. And that kind of ends up being the case with Kote, because she was behind the door when it swung open. So, and there's the first thing you focus on is Yuri, so you have no idea that like, oh, that even think about looking behind you, especially with the window open. So Reiko, but she's more focused on Yuri, and she's not thinking until afterwards, like, oh, the window's open, so maybe the assailant went out the window. But yeah, sadly, they track down Kote, and she's trying to kill herself, but Yoshida stops her because he's like, right, if you're gonna die, I'm gonna go with you. I thought at first, I was like, oh, is it because he's secretly been in love with her? But it's like, no, I serve you, and wherever you go, I will follow behind you, my lady. Because he blames himself, because he's like, it turns out what Teruya did to get close to Yuri, it's the same thing with Teruya. With Kote, like he got close to her. So that's what this all stemmed from. That was Kote's motivation for why she did what she did. It's not like, even she blamed herself. She's like, right, Yuri was an innocent person, and I lashed out at her, because it's like, you're marrying a person that was kind of cozying up to me, but the moment he found a more prominent person to look after, because they were stuck in a situation of like having to pay the inheritance tax, and Yuri's family offered to pay off the Sonji family tax, and so they have access to the property, and so like they've all kind of moved in and lived together. So you're having to live with a person that like, it's part of the family that helped save your family, but the daughter is marrying the man that you kind of fell in love with because he purposely tried to get close to you for money purposes. But now it's like, oh, all that lies with the Yuri's family. And like I said, when he found out about Reiko being a Hosho, like I said, that I think that gold digger in him kicked in, and he was like, oh, kind of sad that he missed out on that opportunity, like I said, because he didn't know Yuri and Reiko were as close as they were. It's really sad that she was basically, I don't know if honey trap would be the right word, but like he manipulated her, and she was just overcome with like anger in that moment, and it just overwhelmed her. Doesn't make it right. And it turns out, Yoshida, and I love a little detail that Kageyama picked up as a butler. He would recognize this, that the fold in which Yoshida had his cloth was different. It was a different fold, because the moment he came in, he saw the knife, and he immediately like got rid of the evidence, and to protect his lady, so he was looking after her. So it is a sad set of circumstances that led to this. So, but because it's such a prominent thing that they're prominent families, this would have led to a bigger issue. So it was handled privately. But yeah, like Kote and Yoshida ended up moving out, because I'm like, what is the future that like how do you handle that? Because it's like, regardless of it all, like Kote ended up stabbing Yuri, so like those families will never be tight. But it's like, I don't know what the future necessarily holds in that capacity. But we do find out later on that Yuri and Teruya ended up calling off their wedding, because now they found out like, oh, Yusuke's thoughts were correct. This guy was just cozying up to my sister. In fact, he did it before, like, showcased him to be the scumbag that he is. He is at the heart of all of this. He's the reason why things played out the way they did, because he manipulated one woman to get and manipulate another woman. So showed his true colors in that capacity. So that is a good silver lining, because Yuri and him would have gone through with the wedding, and she would have been stuck with a manipulative guy like that who didn't really love her. We have Reiko, her takeaway from it, thinking it was interesting how far Yoshida was willing to go for Kote, that he was willing to die for her. And she's like, oh, would you ever, if I was in a situation as Kote, would you do the same thing for me, Kageyama? He's like, my job is to protect you and kind of basically save your life. It almost sounded like he was saying, like, I would never let you be in a situation where I would not want you to die. I would save your life. Not necessarily I'd take my life along with you. He even says it himself, like, yeah, I would not go to the depths of hell for you. You'd basically have to die alone. And then she just kind of laughs, and he's like, aren't you mad? And she's like, no, because I expected you to make a point like that. And she's like, I'll just have to wait to find someone who would die for me. And he's like, yeah, I guess you would have to, my lady. What I wasn't expecting was the month time skip at the end. I was like, oh, where are we going with this? And so Yuri's about to get out of the hospital because they want her to kind of stay still a little bit longer from her recovery. But then immediately they get a call. It turns out Miyuki, her young sister, was kidnapped. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. So it is going to be a continuation next episode, but the timing is interesting. I mean, they are a prominent family, so I guess maybe someone's trying to strike while the iron's hot because the family's in a complicated spot in the aftermath of all that. Maybe that's why they decided to strike when they did. Or we could be dealing with a situation where Miyuki, like, who we don't, a month has skipped, so we don't know like the true after effects of everything that went down. It might have caused some issues amongst her family, and maybe Miyuki like might be doing a thing of she faked her own kidnapping just to rectify, or because she might have felt, I don't know, either ignored in her family, or like I said, in that month time skip, maybe some stuff went down and she wanted to try and mediate something that's going on in the family by having them come together and focus on her. Or it could be like, no, it is just a legitimate kidnapping. We'll have to wait to see. I once again, I'm conflating so many other shows in my head because there's so many things that are 12 or 13 episodes. So I don't know if the next episode is the season finale or even a series finale. Like I said, I need to look into it more to see how much of the books this anime has covered and adapted, because like there's not that many volumes of it. So I don't know if this entire thing is like I think I brought it up in a previous recording, whether or not this is adaptations of just the first books or the sequels, or just the original books or the sequel books that came out a few years ago. Either way, I'll talk about that more once we get to the end of the season, if the next episode is in fact the season finale, because I couldn't track down the immediate number. I thought I saw 12, but I'm not sure. Like I said, I could be conflating it out with other shows. So it feels like this would be an interesting end. I mean, not unless it's like 13 and 12 ends up being like a 12 and 13 is like a 1-2 punch of like, oh, this is file 1 and that's file 2. Like I said, I'm just so curious with just like the one-off structure we've gotten with the last episode and this episode, to see if that ends up being the case with the next episode or not. Like I said, that depends on if it's the season or series finale next episode or not. Either way, I'm excited to see what that case ends up being and how things ultimately end up playing out. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.